Hello, welcome back to the reading of Anthem. We're going to be looking at Chapter 2 today. So in this assignment, you'll be reading Chapter 2 of Anthem and answering questions based on the information from the text. You're going to learn about the science of attraction and see if this novel is a realistic portrayal of attraction or if it's kind of an idealized version of what the author was trying to say with how love works. And then you're going to analyze the quality of life for the characters in this story. Okay, so we're going to watch this quick video. And basically, Equality finds himself in this section in love for the first time and magically drawn to this woman, Liberty 3000. But what is love? So in order to understand that, we need to kind of watch this video quickly to look at that idea.
We like to think of romantic feelings as spontaneous and indescribable things that come from the heart. But it's actually your brain running a complex series of calculations within a matter of seconds that's responsible for determining attraction. Doesn't sound quite as poetic, does it? But just because the calculations are happening in your brain doesn't mean those warm, fuzzy feelings are all in your head. In fact, all 5 of your senses play a role, each able to vote for or veto a budding attraction. The eyes are the first components in attraction. Many visual beauty standards vary between cultures and eras, and signs of youth, fertility, and good health, such as long, lustrous hair or smooth, scar-free skin, are almost always in demand because they're associated with reproductive fitness. And when the eyes spot something they like, our instinct is to move closer so the other senses can investigate. The nose's contribution to romance is more than noticing perfume or cologne. It's able to pick up on natural chemical signals known as pheromones. These not only convey important physical or genetic information about their source, but are able to activate a physiological or behavioral response in the recipient. In one study, a group of women at different points in their ovulation cycles wore the same t-shirts for 3 nights. After male volunteers were randomly assigned to smell either one of the worn shirts or a new unworn one, saliva samples showed an increase in testosterone in those who had smelled a shirt worn by an ovulating woman. Such a testosterone boost may give a man the nudge to pursue a woman he might not have otherwise noticed. A woman's nose is particularly attuned to MHC molecules, which are used to fight disease. In this case, opposites attract. When a study asked women to smell t-shirts that had been worn by different men, they preferred the odors of those whose MHC molecules differed from theirs. This makes sense. Genes that result in a greater variety of immunities may give offspring a major survival advantage. Our ears also determine attraction. Men prefer females with high-pitched, breathy voices and wide formant spacing, correlated with smaller body size, while women prefer low-pitched voices with a narrow formant spacing that suggests a larger body size. And not surprisingly, touch turns out to be crucial for romance. In this experiment, not realizing the study had begun, participants were asked to briefly hold the coffee, either hot or iced. Later, the participants read a story about a hypothetical person and were asked to rate their personality. Those who had held the hot cup of coffee perceived the person in the story as happier, more social, more generous, and better-natured than those who had held the cup of iced coffee, who rated the person as cold, stoic, and unaffectionate. If a potential mate has managed to pass all these tests, there is still one more, the infamous first kiss, a rich and complex exchange of tactile and chemical cues, such as the smell of one's breath and the taste of their mouth. This magical moment is so critical that a majority of men and women have reported losing their attraction to someone after a bad first kiss. Once attraction is confirmed, your bloodstream is flooded with norepinephrine, activating your fight or flight system. Your heart beats faster, your pupils dilate, and your body releases glucose for additional energy, not because you're in danger, but because your body is telling you that something important is happening. To help you focus, norepinephrine creates a sort of tunnel vision, blocking out surrounding distractions, possibly even warping your sense of time and enhancing your memory. This might explain why people never forget their first kiss. The idea of so much of our attraction being influenced by chemicals and evolutionary biology may seem cold and scientific rather than romantic, but the next time you see someone you like, try to appreciate how your entire body is playing matchmaker to decide if that beautiful stranger is right for you.
So with all of these things in mind, we have to kind of look at some information about the novel that we're reading and say, is it realistic? While you read this week, I want you to determine whether Rand's version of attraction is realistic in the novel. In the real world, would these characters have had a chance to fall in love, or is it a necessary plot device to kind of move the story along? So, think about those things as we go through the reading in the next section of the video. So now we're going to read Chapter 2 of Anthem, and remember, keep that idea of the realistic version of love based on what you saw from the video. Would that have actually been able to happen in this chapter when these two characters are interacting with each other? Liberty 5-3000. Liberty 5-3000. Liberty 5-3000. We wish to write this name. We wish to speak it, but we dare not speak it above a whisper. For men are forbidden to take notice of women, and women are forbidden to take notice of men. But we think of one among women, they whose name is Liberty 5-3000, and we think of no others. The women who have been assigned to work the soil live in the homes of the peasants beyond the city. Where the city ends, there is a great road winding off to the north, and we street sweepers must keep this road clean to the first milepost. There is a hedge along the road, and beyond the hedge lies the fields. The fields are black and plowed, and they lie like a great fan before us, with their furrows gathered in some hand beyond the sky, spreading forth from the hand, opening wide apart as they come toward us, like black pleats that sparkle with thin green spangles. Women work in the fields, and their white tunics on the wind are like wings of seagulls beating over the black soil. So we find out in this section that not only is friendship forbidden, but love relationships of any kind are also forbidden. And yet, Equality has just seen Liberty 5-3000, and he's fallen in love with her. And then he gives all this beautiful description of these fields that they're planting and how their togas look like wings of seagulls. So it's a very romantic view of how to look at something when really he's just looking at some black dirt with, green plants in it and some white fabric kind of blowing in the wind. And there it was that we saw Liberty 5-3000 walking along the furrows. Their body was straight and thin as a blade of iron. Their eyes were dark and hard and glowing, with no fear in them, no kindness and no guilt. Their hair was golden as the sun. Their hair flew in the wind, shining and wild, as if it defied men to restrain it. They threw seeds from their hand as if they deigned to fling a scornful gift, and the earth was a beggar under their feet. We stood still. For the first time did we know fear, and then pain. And we stood still that we might not spill this pain more precious than pleasure. Then we heard a voice from the others call their name, Liberty 5-3000, and they turned and walked back. Thus we learned their name, and we stood watching them go, till their white tunic was lost in the blue mist. So he talks about this pain that he's known for the first time, and it's most likely the idea of the pain that it would be like to live without this woman that he now loves, and that he can't have her. That's, another part of it. And the fear that he would lose her, or may never even be able to know her. All right. This idea that he is now afraid that, he may not ever know this person. And if he does, she may be taken away from him. And the following day, as we came to the northern road, we kept our eyes upon Liberty in the field. And each day thereafter we knew the illness of waiting for our hour on the northern road. And there we looked at Liberty each day. We know not whether they looked at us also, but we think they did. Then one day they came close to the hedge, and suddenly they turned to us. They turned in a whirl, and the movement of their body stopped, as if slashed off, as suddenly as it had started. They stood still as a stone, and they looked straight upon us, straight into our eyes. There was no smile on their face and no welcome. But their face was taut, and their eyes were dark. Then they turned as swiftly, and they walked away from us. But the following day, when we came to the road, they smiled. They smiled to us and for us, and we smiled in answer. Their head fell back, and their arms fell, as if their arms and their thin white neck were stricken suddenly with a great lassitude. They were not looking upon us, but upon the sky. Then they glanced at us over their shoulder, as we felt as if a hand had touched our body, slipping softly from our lips to our feet. Every morning thereafter we greeted each other with our eyes. We dared not speak. It is a transgression to speak to men of other trades, save in groups at the social meetings. But once standing at the hedge, we raised our hand to our forehead and then moved it slowly, palm down, toward liberty. Had the others seen it, they could have guessed nothing, for it looked only as if we were shading our eyes from the sun. But liberty saw it and understood. They raised their hand to their forehead and moved it as we had. Thus each day we greet liberty, and they answer, and no man can suspect. All right, so they can't even speak to others outside of their own job without it being some sort of organized social setting where people are around. So they have to invent these hand signals to be able to communicate with each other. We do not wonder at this new sin of ours. It is our second transgression of preference, for we do not think of all of our brothers as we must, but only of one, and their name is Liberty 53000. We do not know why we think of them. We do not know why, when we think of them, we feel all of a sudden that the earth is good and that it is not a burden to live. We do not think of them as Liberty 53000 any longer. We have given them a name in our thoughts. We call them the Golden One. But it is a sin to give men names which distinguish them from other men. Yet we can call them the Golden One, for they are not like the others. The Golden One are not like the others. And we take no heed of the law which says that men may not think of women, save at the time of mating. This is the time each spring when all of the men older than 20 and all of the women older than 18 are sent for one night to the city palace of mating. And each of the men have one of the women assigned to them by the Council of Eugenics. Children are born each winter, but women never see their children, and children never know their parents. Twice have we been sent to the palace of mating, but it is an ugly and shameful matter of which we do not like to think. So people in this society aren't allowed to choose a mate at all. Instead, they're assigned to someone, and they go to this place. They spend one night together, and it is only for the purpose of producing children. And then those children are taken away from their mothers and raised in those separate groups like Equality was when he was younger. This is very much like The Last Dog. We read that, a while back, and the same sort of thing happened with Brock in that story. And if you read The Giver, something very similar happens in that book as well. All right. We had broken so many laws, and today we have broken one more. Today we spoke to the Golden One. The other women were far off in the field when we stopped at the hedge by the side of the road. The Golden One were kneeling alone at the moat which runs through the field, and the drops of water falling from their hands as they raised the water to their lips were like sparks of fire in the sun. Then the Golden One saw us, and they did not move, kneeling there, looking at us, and circles of light played upon their white tunic from the sun on the water of the moat, and the one sparkling drop fell from a finger of their hand held as frozen in the air. So when he describes Liberty, or the Golden One, he basically is using very much this like angelic or goddess-like imagery to show us how he truly feels about her and what he really thinks of her. Then the Golden One rose and walked to the hedge, as if they had heard a command in our eyes. The two other street sweepers of our brigade were hundreds of paces away down the road, and we thought that International would not betray us and Union would not understand. So we looked straight upon the Golden One, and we saw the shadows of their lashes on their white cheeks and the sparks of sun on their lips, and we said, "You are beautiful, Liberty 53000." Their face did not move, and they did not avert their eyes. Only their eyes grew wider, and there was triumph in their eyes. And it was not triumph over us, but over things we could not guess. Then they asked, "What's your name?" "Equality, 72521, we answered. "You are not one of our brothers, Equality 72521, for we do not wish you to be." We cannot say what they meant, for there are no words for their meaning, but we know it without words, and we knew it then. "No," we answered, "nor are you one of our sisters." "If you see us among scores of women, will you look upon us?" "We shall look upon you, Liberty 53000, if we see you among all the women of the earth." Then they asked, "Are street sweepers sent to different parts of the city, or do they always work in the same places?" "They always work in the same places," we answered, "and no one will take this road away from us." "Your eyes," they said, "are not like the eyes of any among men." And suddenly, without cause, for the thought which came to us, we felt cold, cold to our stomach. "How old are you?" we asked. They understood our thought, for they lowered their eyes for the first time. 17, they whispered, and we sighed, as if a burden had been taken from us, for we had been thinking without reason of the palace of mating, and we thought that we would not let the Golden One be sent to the palace. How to prevent it, how to bar the will of the councils, we knew not, but we knew suddenly that we would. Only we do not know why such thought came to us, for these ugly matters bear no relation to us and the Golden One. What relation can they bear? So he thinks about how old she is and if she's ever been to the palace of mating or when she will go, and finding out that she's 17 and she's never been, he doesn't want her to have to go. He finds these experiences to be very negative, very shameful and ugly, and he doesn't want her to have to experience those things. So now we kind of see what's going to start driving the plot, and the idea that he is going to have to find some way to stop her from going to the palace of mating, and that is going to force him to choose between Liberty and the rest of his society. So this is where we really have to look at that idea of, is this love realistic? Yes, they saw each other, but he was instantly in love with her without any of those other five senses coming into play. So you have to stop and you have to wonder, is this Ayn Rand just speeding up the process so that we have some sort of plot developing and some sort of catalyst for moving the plot forward? Still without reason, as we stood there by the hedge, we felt our lips drawn tight with hatred, a sudden hatred for all our brother men. And the Golden One saw it and smiled slowly, and there was in their smile the first sadness we had seen in them. We think that in the wisdom of women the Golden One had understood more than we can understand. Then 3 of the sisters in the field appeared, coming toward the road, so the Golden One walked away from us. They took the bag of seeds, and they threw the seeds into the furrows of the earth as they walked away, but the seeds flew wildly from the hand of the Golden One, for the hand of the Golden One was trembling. Yet, as we walked back to the home of the street sweepers, we felt that we wanted to sing without reason. So we were reprimanded tonight in the dining hall, for without knowing it, we had begun to sing aloud some tune we had never heard. But it is not proper to sing without reason, save the social meetings. "We are singing because we are happy," we answered, the one of the home council who reprimanded us. "Indeed, you are happy," they answered. "How else can men be when they live for their brothers?" So he's happy for the first time in his life, and he isn't able to share it with anyone, not even International. And he starts singing but because he's singing, this could put him in danger, and he could also risk liberty being taken away if they find out. And now, sitting here in our tunnel, we wonder about these words. It is forbidden not to be happy, for, as it has been explained to us, men are free, and the earth belongs to them, and all things on earth belong to all men, and the will of all men together is good for all. And so all men must be happy. Yet, as we stand at night in the great hall, removing our garments for sleep, we look upon our brothers and we wonder. The heads of our brothers are bowed, the eyes of our brothers are dull, and never do they look on one another in the eyes. The shoulders of our brothers are hunched, and their muscles are drawn, as if their bodies were shrinking and wished to shrink out of sight. And a word steals into our mind as we look upon our brothers, and that word is fear. There is a fear hanging in the air of the sleeping halls and in the air of the streets. Fear walks through the city, fear without name, without shape. All men feel it, and none dare to speak. So we have to sit and think, is equality truly free, or anyone in his society for that matter? They're living a half-life. Is this freedom? They are to demand anything better than what they have been given, or not to, I should say. They can't better their lives in any way, shape, or form. So all of these people are hunched over, and their eyes are dull, and they're really not living. And equality is probably the first and only one to really notice this. We feel it also when we are in the home of the street sweepers, but here in our tunnel, we feel it no longer. The air is pure under the ground. There's no odor of men, and these 3 hours give us strength for our hours above the ground. Our body is betraying us, for the council of the home looks with suspicion upon us. It is not good to feel too much joy, nor be glad that our body lives. For we matter not, and it must not matter to us whether we live or die, which is to be as our brothers will it. But we equality are glad to be living. If this is a vice, then we wish no virtue. Yet our brothers are not like us. All is not well with our brothers. There are at Fraternity 25503 a quiet boy with wise, kind eyes who cries suddenly, without reason, in the midst of the day or night, and their body shakes with sobs they cannot explain. There are Solidarity 96347 who are a bright youth without fear in the day, but they scream in their sleep, and they scream, "Help! Help us! Help us!" into the night in a voice which chills our bones, but the doctors cannot cure Solidarity 96347. So you have to kind of sit back and watch and say, if these men are so free and these men are living such a wonderful life, why are they so disturbed? Is it because they're denied basic human rights, or are there other reasons? Have they been punished? Is there something else that is keeping them having these horrible, traumatic reactions to things? And as we all undress at night in the dim light of the candles, our brothers are silent, for they dare not speak the thoughts of their minds. For all must agree with all, and they cannot know of their thoughts or the thoughts of all, and so they fear to speak. And they are glad when the candles are blown for the night. But we, equality, look through the window upon the sky, and there is peace in the sky, and cleanliness and dignity, and beyond the city there lies the plain, and beyond the plain, black upon the black sky, there lies the uncharted forest. So this idea of foreshadowing keeps coming up. Why do we keep coming back to the uncharted forest? All right, that should be something that sticks in your mind. They mentioned it in the second part of the last chapter, and now we are coming back to this. So think about it. We don't know much about this place. Equality doesn't know much about this place, but how might it factor into the story later? We do not wish to look upon the uncharted forest. We do not wish to think of it, but ever do our eyes return to that black patch upon the sky. Men never enter the uncharted forest, for there is no power to explore it and no path to lead among its ancient trees, which stand as guards of fearful secrets. It is whispered that once or twice in 100 years, one among the men of the city escape alone and run to the uncharted forest without call or reason. These men do not return. They perish from hunger and from the claws of the wild beasts which roam the forest, but our councils say that this is only a legend. We have heard that there are many uncharted forests over the land among the cities, and it is whispered that they have grown over the ruins of the many cities of the unmentionable times. The trees are swallowed, the ruins and the bones under the ruins, and all the things which perished. And as we look upon the uncharted forest far in the night, we think of the secrets of the unmentionable times, and we wonder how it came to pass that these secrets were lost to the world. We have heard the legends of the great firing, in which many men fought on one side and only a few on the other. These few were the evil ones, and they were conquered. Then great fires raged over the land, and in these fires the evil ones and all the things made by the evil ones were burned. And the fire, which is called the dawn of the great rebirth, was the script fire, where all the scripts of the evil ones were burned, and with them all the words of the evil ones. Great mountains of flame stood in the squares of the cities for 3 months. Then came the great rebirth. So we have to kind of look at this information that Equality is getting. We know that he gets most of his information from the government in some way, shape, or form. So, they say that these people escaped into the uncharted forest, but and that they never returned, that they perished from hunger or died from animals. But we have to say, is that true? Or did they just find another way to live in the forest? Did they find a way to live off the land? Or did they find another community that was willing to accept them? We don't know. And then we have to look at this war that they're talking about that's fought between two sides. Why is one side considered evil? What did they do? And why were these books, that's what they mean by scripts, why were all these books burned? What didn't this group of people want others to know? So these are the things you have to really think about as you are reading through this section. The words of the evil one, the words of the unmentionable times, what are the words which we have lost? May the council have mercy upon us. We have no wish to write such a question, and we knew not what we were doing till we had written it. We shall not ask this question, and we shall not think it. We shall not call death upon our head. And yet, there is some word, one single word, which is not in the language of men, but which had been. And this is the unspeakable word, which no man may speak nor hear. But sometimes, and it is rare, sometimes, somewhere, one among men find that word. They find it upon scraps of old manuscripts or cut into the fragments of ancient stones. But when they speak it, they are put to death. There is no crime punished by death in this world, save the one crime of speaking the unspeakable word. So this is where you have to start saying, what could that word be? Think of the words that they are missing in their language and why they call each other we. All right, they don't have individuality, so think about what could that word possibly be. We have seen one of such men burned alive in the square of the city, and it was a sight which had stayed with us through the years, and it taunts us, and it follows us, and it gives us no rest. We were a child then, 10 years old, and we stood in the great square with all the children and all the men of the city sent to behold the burning. They brought the transgressor out into the square, and they led them to the pyre. They had torn out the tongue of the transgressor, so that they could speak no longer. The transgressor were young and tall. They had hair of gold and eyes of blue as morning. They walked to the pyre, and their step did not falter. And of all the faces on that square, of all the faces which shrieked and screamed and spat curses upon them, theirs was the calmest and the happiest face. So everyone watches public executions here, so they learn not to commit crimes or question authority. And this is very much like the situation in Part 1 of The Beautiful People, where everyone watches old traumatic historical events to teach people a lesson. As the chains were wound over their body at the stake and the flame set to the pyre, the transgressor looked upon the city. There was a thin thread of blood running from the corner of their mouth, but their lips were smiling. And a monstrous thought came to us then, which has never left us. We had heard of the saints. There are the saints of labor and the saints of the councils and the saints of the great rebirth. But we had never seen a saint, nor what the likeness of a saint should be. And we thought then, standing in the square, that the likeness of a saint was the face we saw before us in the flames, the face of the transgressor of the unspeakable word. As the flames rose, a thing happened which no eye saw but ours, else we would not be living today. Perhaps it had only seemed to us, but it seemed to us that the eyes of the transgressor had chosen us from the crowd and were looking straight upon us. There was no pain in their eyes, and no knowledge of the agony of their body. There was only joy in them, and pride holier than it is fit for human pride to be. And it seemed as if these eyes were trying to tell us something through the flames, to send into our eyes some word without sound. And it seemed as if these eyes were begging us to gather that word and not let it go from us and from the earth. But the flames rose, and we could not guess the word. What, even if we have to burn for it like the saint of the pyre, what is the unspeakable word? So equality is probably one of the only people in this society that doesn't feel like this man is evil, but rather he's like a saint. He admires him and he connects with him on a deeper level, and he also deeply wants to know this unspeakable word, even though if he were to know it, let alone not even just say it, but know it, he would probably be put to death. All right, so this gives you a little bit more insight into what this community is. So this is it for today. We'll pick up next time for chapter 3 and 4, and please now, once you finish this, you're going to move on and finish the form that goes along with this week's reading. All right, have a great day, everyone.